Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Lindsey series. This is the biggest district in Lincolnshire, containing 188 civil parishes. Without further ado, here's today's offering. Welcome back to East Lindsey again, folks, and to another very small village here on the Lincolnshire landscape. Now behind me you can see there's a massive area of trees, like a big copse, like a wood. Now there is a house in there, quite a big house. It's a hall, in fact, and that is basically the crux of this episode. This is an estate village and it all belonged to that hall, and that hall belongs to the parish of Ranby. The East Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles, 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Ranby, Randy's farmstead. We're getting used to these tiny East Lindsey villages now, aren't we? Here's another one for you to feast your eyes upon. Today we make a triumphant return to the Lincolnshire Wolds. It's been a while, and we find ourselves in the parish of Ranby. Listed in the Domesday Book as Randebi, meaning Randy's farmstead, Ranby is situated about 6 miles northwest of Horncastle, close to the B1225, which runs along the eastern edge of the Wolds. The Domesday Book mentions Ranby at that time as consisting of 29 households, a mill and a church. That means this is one of those rare villages which is now actually smaller than it was in 1086. Ranby still has a church, but there's no mill and only 27 houses. Ranby is well known within Lincolnshire thanks to the Needler family. Since 1970, the Needlers have reared cattle here, the Lincoln Reds, a herd which has been producing prime beef for decades and continues to do so today. Also at its western edge is the Georgian-fronted country house Ranby Hall, which has been here since 1868 and been lived in by a few notables. Flanked by a Roman road, it's surrounded by the beauty of the Wolds pretty much in all directions and well worth coming to take a look at. So, without further ado, that's what we're going to do. We begin on the B1225, which is known as the High Street. This runs from Horncastle to Caister along the western edge of the Lincolnshire Wolds. Ranby Village is just within the boundaries of the Wolds, meaning it sits within an area of outstanding natural beauty. That said, the village itself ain't half bad. Our first task is to tackle Ranby Hall, a Grade 2 listed brick country house dating from 1868. It sits within an enclosure surrounded by trees at the entrance to the village. It's the biggest and most important property here, but its situation makes it difficult to film. It's private property and it can't really be seen from either the High Street or Top Lane, the road into Ranby. So with that in mind, here's a bit about the hall and its importance in pictorial form before we get the boots on and begin walking properly. Ranby Hall has had several notable people reside within its walls. This mansion was originally built for the Otter family of Clayworth, Nottinghamshire in 1868. In the early 20th century, it was in the possession of two people with very long and posh-sounding names. Firstly, in 1905, it was occupied by Lieutenant Colonel Rowley Richard Conway Hill, and then in 1919 by Lord Charles Cavendish Bentinck. It became a rectory soon afterwards, and in 1933 it was lived in by the Reverend John B. Hagar. Although it was built in the Victorian period, the house is late Georgian architecturally, with a pedimented front and a porte cochere. That's a French term which means a covered entrance. Usually a porte cochere is large enough for vehicles to pass through and typically opens up into a courtyard. Its small parkland includes a lake within the trees that surround it, and there's also a stable block built in the same pleasing yellow buff brick as the hall itself. The grounds also include a small dovecote, which is an added feature of interest. Now, let's go and see the village associated with this grand Lincolnshire property. Well, that's the hall dealt with. You can see it's behind those trees over there. Private property, can't do anything about it, so that's why you have the pictures and the information about it in that way. Now, the rest of the village is very easy. It's a linear village. Well, kind of a linear village. We start at this massive green here with these beautiful trees on it. We're going to walk around this green and then head through the village. Again, like I said, it's linear, so it's just a simple case of walking from one end to the other and see what it's got. Let's go. The village green, with its several tall and ancient looking trees, is a welcome sight as you enter Ranby. This is the sort of thing we can come to expect as we dive deeper into the Wolds. This western end of the village is pretty sparsely populated. There's a handful of cottages and other buildings, but Ranby will never expand out here. There's way too much high quality farmland for that. In total, Ranby has just 27 houses, 28 if you include the hall. That makes it more than double the size of Great Sturton, but it's still a mere speck on the Lincolnshire landscape. This lane, which leads north to Market Stainton, gives us our first look at the church. That's a ways away from the village and stands all on its own on a shallow hill. We'll drive up to that later. This is the view looking east across the Wolds. Somewhere across there are the villages of Gulsby and Asterby, two of Ranby's near neighbours. Heading through the village, we pass an old forge where at one time Ranby's blacksmith would have been hard at work. He would have likely made horseshoes, and that fact is backed up by the presence of an old stable block next door. Ranby's history is not very well documented, but it's hard to look past its rural roots. For sure, this is a village that's never known anything else but farming and the associated trades, trials and tribulations that come with it. The locals do hold a parish meeting, and I'm sure if they see my card on the parish notice board, they'll be thrilled that their village is now on YouTube. Mark it off. Visitors to Ranby can make use of this board. Here, there's a map showing the location of all 27 houses. One of them is a former school. My sources tell me it was built before 1900 and it could hold 104 children. Over the road is Ranby Hall Farm, which would have once been associated with the mansion we covered earlier. Ranby Hall Farm is 19th century and built around a courtyard similar to the ones we met at the Manor Farms in Great Sturton and Langton. There is, however, more than one farm in this place. Ranby Grange is run by the Needler family, well known and respected across the UK as leading breeders of Lincoln red cattle. Their Walmer herd, based here at Ranby, has produced prime beef for decades. It currently consists of around 70 breeding cows, bulls and heifers. The Ranby Lincoln Reds can trace their history back to 1946, when Headley Needler began the herd and set up at Walmer House Farm in South Killingholme. Walmer House and the land it stood on was bought for the development of the oil refineries in 1966, forcing them to move. Since 1970, the Needlers have been here at Ranby Grange. Now, far be it from me to talk ill of a Lincolnshire village, but I reckon the refineries did them a favour. South Killingholme is nice and all, but it doesn't have the picturesque views that Ranby does. Everywhere you look in this place, you're bound to get a good one. Well, didn't I tell you guys at the end of the West Lindsey series we hadn't finished with the Lincolnshire Wolds and there's still plenty of beautiful areas still to cover. I think that this is definitely one of the ones that goes up in the higher echelons of beauty, if you ask me. Look at this view here at the eastern end of the village. You know, I could stand there all day and admire that, provided the weather was okay. So, yeah, It's fantastic, isn't it? The Lincolnshire Wolds is one of the places to be in the summer and the springtime. Okay, now we are not quite done with this village yet, because even though we've walked from one end to the other, one big thing we haven't covered is the church, but it doesn't stand within the main village cluster. It's to the north. It's right on the parish boundary with Market Stainton, actually. It's only just in Ranby. Let's drive up there and have a look at it. To get to the church, we have to leave the main cluster and head up to Church Lane, quite a way away from the core of the village. The B1225 is an old Roman road in existence from at least the 3rd century, if not before. It begins in Horncastle and runs right up the western edge of the Wolds to the Humber at South Ferriby. The route follows an old trackway. Known as High Street, it's generally a ridgeway that in the central part of its course is followed by parish boundaries for continuously long distances. We have seen this road before, albeit in various fits and starts. It's the same road that passes through Nettleton Top, where the remains of Roman properties were found during excavations. The parish church, another Grade 2 listed building, is dedicated to St Germain or St Germain, depending on your preference of address. This one dates from the 12th century, although it was rebuilt in 1861 by, who else, James Fowler of Louth. He reused a lot of fragments from the previous church to do so. The building is full of features both internally and externally. Looking at the tower, you might be able to spot some large ornate gargoyles of pigs and humans, which are of particular interest. The church isn't open daily, it's kept locked, and unfortunately it was so on this occasion. However, it is worth the effort to obtain the keys and take a peek within. Inside you'll find a richly mounted vestry fireplace, a 19th century tie-beam roof over the nave, and a wagon roof over the chancel. It's also got 19th century pews with small doors. Also well worth a look are the pulpit and the octagonal stone font, which has cusped panels with flower heads and coats of arms. Don't underestimate the view from the churchyard here either. From here, next week's village can clearly be seen in the valley below, along with a very tall and well-known East Lindsey landmark. Well as next week's village, from this point you can also see another major Lincolnshire landmark. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but I can definitely see it clearly straight in front of me, and that is the Belmont Transmitting Tower. It's kind of there. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a long way away for the camera, but obviously with the human naked eye you can see a lot better. We will be covering that in a future episode. It doesn't fall within Ranby's boundaries or the boundaries of the next one, but it is in East Lindsey and it is going to be covered at some point, and I'll tell you all about it when we get there. It's a landmark that a lot of people know when they're travelling towards the seaside, shall we say, via this particular route. And that's it for Ranby. Time to hop in the car and go towards the next one. And that's going to wrap up Ranby. Next week's village is literally within walking distance from this church, so theoretically a stroll over this part of the Wolds means you can visit 2 churches within about 10 minutes. However, the church isn't the main attraction in the next village, but its association with the RAF most certainly is. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.